Welcome to the 5 for 2 podcast with me, your host Adele, where we say no to careers where you're trading 5 days of misery for 2 days of fun. A place we discuss all things career, confidence, and money moves. I want to motivate, teach, and empower ambitious women to achieve more, earn more, feel more confident, and enjoy the work they do. It's all about believing you can have everything you want in your career and then going and getting it. So if you're ready, let's get into it. Hey guys, before you tune into this episode, I just want to give you a trigger warning. We are speaking a little bit about depression, suicidal thoughts, and things like that. So before you dive in, I just want to let you know that this episode will contain those type of things. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of 5 for 2 Careers. Today, I am joined by someone who is a whole ball of energy. She has such great insights. When I first met her, we had such an amazing conversation, and I knew that I needed to bring her to you guys so you could hear some things that we're going to talk about around culture, around background, around how you were raised and how it affects your career. So I'm going to introduce Divya, and she is going to tell you all about herself, what she does. She is an awesome resume writer and so much more. So Divya, welcome, and please introduce yourself to the listeners.
Hey guys, I am Divya. I can't obviously match the introduction that you just did, but I will try my best to match the energy. So I am a resume coach and an interview coach. I have over 139,000 followers on Instagram. Super excited. I'm based in a small country, New Zealand. I hope you guys can find that on the map. Not a lot of people can. And I've been living in New Zealand for 8 years almost, and New Zealand's sort of home. Been here the most amount of time after India. I'm originally from India, and I'm super excited to be here. I've heard such great things about this podcast, and I've seen so many epic guests come in, and I'm so honored to be here.
Oh, thank you. Well, tell the listeners, you told them that you're a resume and interview coach, but tell us a little bit more about yourself, like your upbringing, how you became a coach. Just tell us, how did you get here?
Okay, so how did I become a coach? Okay, so I came to New Zealand as an international student in 2016 to do my bachelor's in engineering. And there's not a lot of resources and information for international students, especially once you come into the country. There's not a lot of support that I found it from the universities, as universities usually, treat international students like pocket change or, big loads of cash. But once you come on overseas and on shore, you sort of are not given that support in terms of employability, in terms of industry, in terms of networking. So my whole 4 years of engineering was me trying to understand how things work in New Zealand. How does the recruitment work? Because India is different to Europe, to US, to New Zealand. And how can I make my chances better of getting a job? Because market's tough. And as an international student on a work visa, it's even tougher because, employers are a little bit scared to hire international students or immigrants because they worry that the visa is going to expire in 2 years, then what? So to beat those odds, I had to, from the first year, had to overachieve. I did a lot of leadership activities, volunteering. I was also the president of my student association. I was a UN ambassador. Like, I went out there and I did everything I could to make my resume, because one thing I was told was the better your resume is in terms of leadership, the better your chances are of getting interviews with top companies. And I did get my first graduate role with a really big company in Australasia 6 months before graduation, I was the first international student from university to do that.
Amazing.
Yeah, and that was very stress-free for me and my parents both, because there's a lot of financial pressure we have as international students. And through my journey, what I noticed was I did things right, and I can teach other people to do it right. Because a lot of international students may not have the kind of mentors I had, or may not have the kind of confidence I had, but may also have faced a lot of anxiety, overwhelm, and also, more importantly, imposter syndrome. When you come to a new country, you're like, I am sticking out like a sore thumb. I need to fit in. So that's why I started just going on Instagram and posting about it. One of my friends helped me make a post and helped me organize my feed when I had only 500 followers, and it just picked up. And I saw so much response. I saw how people could relate to me and how the tips I was giving really helped people. And that's when I knew I was doing something right.
Oh, I love that story. I love that not only did you talk the talk, but you walk the walk. I think that's so important for a coach when you have done it yourself and then you can model it for other people. So you're not just talking about it, you're actually being about it. So I think that's amazing. And the fact that you were able to turn your adversity, the things that were hard for you are now able to support people to make it easier for them, like to get through the process, to make themselves stand out. So you are definitely in the right place, on the right podcast, with the right listeners, because this is everything that they're going to want to hear and know about, because so many of them may not be in the same exact situation, but they don't know how to sell themselves. They don't know what they need to get on their resume so that they can get out there and get noticed. The fact that you got noticed 6 months before graduation, that just says it all. So guys, this woman knows her stuff. She knows what she's talking about. So we are going to dive into cultural programming. The first time we spoke, we got into this conversation where we were talking about when you have parents that are from overseas. So when you have immigrant parents and you are like the first generation, like I'm first generation Caribbean, like my parents were born in the Caribbean, they came to the UK, but we're raised differently. And Divya was telling me about like being raised in India and culturally how that affects what we do in our careers, like what we get told growing up. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and talk to you guys about some things that might be showing up for you that you didn't even realize might be things that are holding you back. Like sometimes the imposter syndrome is even heightened from cultural programming. So we're going to talk a little bit about it. For anyone who's listening who's like, what is cultural programming, Del? Just keep listening and it will all start to make sense. So Divya, let us know about your background. What was your upbringing like before you moved to New Zealand?
Yeah, I mean, I was born in New Delhi, India, and my bringing for the first, 10, 12 years of my life was very, I saw my parents, make everything from the scratch. We were quite, I wouldn't say poor, but we were quite struggling financially. My parents had 3 kids. We were living in an apartment with maybe 1 bedroom and 6 people, my grandpa and grandma. So we didn't have all the resources. Everything had to be sectioned in. We didn't have Nike shoes. We didn't have, flashy bags. So I grew up quite seeing the one end of the financial spectrum to the other one. My father did around my teenage years, saw a little bit better, financial returns in his business, and we moved to from the rural part of Delhi. Yes, Delhi had a rural part sometime,
Okay.
not anymore. Right now it's like a concrete jungle, but at that time we moved out from there to a more, suburban or city type vibe in Delhi, North Delhi. So that's when post 15, I saw like, I got my first Nike shoes, and I remember like the feeling, my father buying me my first Nike shoes. So I've seen the whole thing where, and now, I was privileged enough for parents to fund my international education, which is very, very expensive. So yeah, it was quite a very humble, I guess, beginning and quite challenging. So it's always good to know, as a kid, to see from the worst to the best, and to know where
Yes.
you're coming from and be humble.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I relate to that so much. When you were talking about the Nike shoes, I was like, oh my gosh. I remember when I got my first pair of Nikes, I was like 12, 11 or 12, which was pretty decent, but I hadn't had any kind of name brand before that. My mum just couldn't afford it. Even to get me the ones when I was 12, she saved up for almost a year just so that I could have, and I still had to get the cheapest ones. But I remember we didn't have money when I was growing up. So I relate to that so much. And I feel like growing up like that gives you a different appreciation, firstly, for things, but it also, for me anyway, and you can tell me what it made you feel, but for me, it made me feel like I was going to have to work really hard. Because to watch my mum work for a year to be able to get me these Nikes made me feel like I was always going to have to work really hard, jump through a lot of hoops to make the money I wanted to make. So from a young age, that was ingrained in me. I thought that I was going to have to I always thought of work and money as something that was really hard. Money was really hard to get. It was really hard to get what you wanted. You had to work loads of hours. So that definitely affected me in my career. How do you feel like your culture maybe affected you in your career and that upbringing? How do you think that showed up in your career?
Okay. So for Indians, I'm not sure how it is for you, but it is
Mhm.
so complex. I'm not even
Okay.
gonna lie. I'm sure all the Indians listening to this are probably nodding and they're like, here
Yeah.
comes the can of worms, I guess. As Indian, the number one thing is being a female from India. And I'm
Mm.
not, you know, trying to underplay or overplay it, but I'm just saying that you have so many hurdles to pass through. You're
Mhm.
constantly told you're going to be married off and, what are you going to do with better education or what are you going to do moving out of the city or why should we invest in you? So you're constantly made to feel that you're a burden, to your
Mm.
parents, like a
Mhm.
financiality. So
Right.
even to ask for things like a pair of Nikes, which my brother could like so outrightly ask, like a spoiled little kid.
Yes.
For me, I had to come up with a story of why I need it, like,
Yes.
oh, I'm playing football and the coach
Mhm.
said this is the cheapest one, and come up with like three different options and show it to my father. Whereas my brother didn't have to do all those things.
Mhm.
So there is that always that feeling of you are a liability and you have to work extra hard
Mm.
to prove yourself. You will always be judged the most, and that's the cultural programming I was set in, and that's something I'm trying to break out of, but I still have it. And also the fact that whatever you do will never be good enough. It's the way you're raised,
Ooh.
especially, like you always have to be an overachiever. For example, in
Mhm.
India, 93% is not good enough. Somebody can get 98.99%, and they're also not good enough because somebody might have 99%. So you're constantly in that hamster wheel that no matter what
Mhm.
you do, you constantly have to keep working and working and working. And you cannot expect people to see your value.
Mm.
And I'm not trying to say anything wrong about my parents or anything like that, but that's just how they were raised. And they tried their best. However, that's what I felt that no matter what I do, I'm not good enough. So what's the point? So, for example, in India, we have an engineering exam which is very difficult in India, which is IIT JEE. I'm sure Indian people listening to this is probably nodding. So that's like the OG of engineering exams. Like only like IIT is one of the best universities in the world, like right up there with MITs and stuff. And to get in, you have to be like Albert Einstein of India, pretty much. Like you have to be like the top of the top of the top of the top of the cream crowd, right? But I had such cultural programming where I didn't even sit for the exam because I was like, I'm not good enough. I'm useless. I'm below average. Although I might have got 93% in my year 12. Like that's pretty
Wow.
good. Like to tell
Yes.
people, right? And
Yes.
for that, like I didn't even sit in it because
Mhm.
I knew I was not good enough. And no matter how much I study, I'll never be able to clear it. What's the point? So maybe that was good
Mhm.
or bad. I don't know. But the whole life, I guess, the way we're raised is, especially Indians, is that oh, you can't be an artist or you can't be a graphic designer, you have to be a doctor, engineer, lawyer,
Mhm.
because they are more prestigious.
Yes.
And people think that because they're prestigious, those are the industry that only earn the most money. And you have to constantly keep working and working and working. And there is no end at the light. No, there's no light at the tunnel. So yeah, that's the kind of cultural programming I was raised in.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I know for a fact all the like you said, all the Indian people listening are going to relate. But also, if you are from the Caribbean or you are African, and I mean you have parents that are born there, they will relate. As a Caribbean child, I would come home with 98%, and my mum's answer would be, "Where is the other two?" Like I was an overachiever in school. I worked my ass off. I would come home with 98% guys on a test. And she would say, "Where's the other two?" I would get 9 out of 10 on a spelling test. And she would say, "Where's the other one? Like you're useless." Like, why? She would say to me, "Why do I feed you if you're not going to use the brain cells that God gave you to get better grades?" My mum is a great mum. I don't want anyone to think my mum is not a great mum, but this is how she was raised. In the Caribbean, this is how she was raised. And on top of that, she would say things like, "If you can't cook and clean, how will you get a husband?" I was like 8 and 9, trying to get a husband, mum. Like, it's exactly what you get told. Like, not only do you need to get the 100% on the test because otherwise you're useless. And I agree with you in the fact that it means that you're always striving, like, you never think you're good enough. Even when like, I get an A in a test and I'll be like, well, it wasn't 100%. That would always be my thought. I would be like, even though I got an A, the highest grade you can get, it's like, but I didn't get 100%. I got 98% and that was an A. For my mum, that's not going to be good enough. So that showed up in work later in life. Even if you don't know it, guys, it will show up in work. Like I used to, be working extra hard. And if my boss said one thing wrong to me, I'd think like I was the worst employee in the world because I've never felt good enough because being told constantly that this isn't good enough. And I do think this is a immigrant thought process. I do think a lot of if they grow up in like a third world or anything like that, they are taught differently from growing up in the Western world. And it is very different from, for instance, my friends who have parents who have Caribbean backgrounds, but they're born in the UK. They are not the same as parents who are born in the actual Caribbean. They're not the same. We're not raised the same. We're not taught the same. I definitely would be scared to come home with anything less than an A because it wasn't good enough. Recently, and I'm a grown woman, guys, recently me and my mum were talking because my daughter is currently going through her exams and she's now in college. So she's studying for her A-levels. And my mum was saying to me, oh, she's just as smart as you. And I said, oh, she's smarter than me because she gets A's and I was getting B's. My mum said to me, oh, it's disgusting how you didn't apply yourself. You could have got A's. And I was like, wait, what? I was in school 20 years ago. Why are you still telling me off? And this is what I'm saying. No matter how much I've achieved in my life now, no matter how well I'm doing, still just 48 hours ago, my mum was like disappointed with me because I got B's in my GCSE. And she was saying, I'm sure you got some A's. And I was like, no, I got all B's because I literally got 9 B's. And she was like, that's so bad. It's such a poor performance. She started to get annoyed as if I was still in school getting the B's, which are very bad grades as far as she's concerned. She was very upset and I had to change the conversation really quickly. And I think that just shows that constant bombardment of not feeling good enough, no matter what, will show up. So even I tend to find that people that have immigrant parents, it's almost to the point where you try to be a perfectionist or you go to the other extreme and you do nothing at all. But most of the time, Divya, guys, if you can see Divya now, she's pointing at herself saying, yes, me. Because being a perfectionist, I definitely feel like coming from that background, I'm always striving to be perfect. And perfect doesn't exist for anyone who's listening and anyone who's still stuck in that cycle. I'm a recovering perfectionist because I still am. I still get those little niggles in the back of my mind, the imposter syndrome, where I'm like, I'm not good enough. I'm a failure. I have to work through it. But that programming will show up. That will stop you maybe going for the higher paying job. Because like Divya was saying, she didn't go for the exam because what's the point? I'm not good enough, so why would I go? And sometimes we need to stop and think, is this you talking or is this your upbringing? Are you hearing your parents' voices in your head? Are you hearing your uncles and aunties' voices in your head without even realizing it? Because like I said, as a grown-ass woman with a child of 17 years old, my mum was trying to chastise me 48 hours ago, telling me I had not applied myself and I should have done better. I was like, it's too late, Mum, I can't go back in history. But I felt her annoyance and I quickly tried to change the subject. And I'm sure for you growing up, Divya, like there would have been times where you probably, like you said, you had to make up stories to get the things you want. So you probably quickly had to change the story, like when people weren't happy with you or they were disappointed. How do you think that like perfectionism, like you were pointing and saying, yeah, you relate to the whole perfectionist thing. How do you feel like that showed up for you in your career, like needing to be a perfectionist?
I completely agree with you, where because you're raised in such a stringent, strict, overly analytical, critical, full of criticism, household, and that comes from because my parents were not immigrant; they were born. They are in India. I'm the first person, my entire generation, like I would say, like
Wow.
close family, or even my parents to go overseas and settle overseas. So
Wow.
I'll be an immigrant parent to my
You're
kids.
the
So yeah,
immigrant
you could
parent.
ask them
Yes.
in a few years, in like 10, 20 years. I'm like, how did she traumatize you? Because I'm sure I did. However, perfectionism, as I said, how it showed up is in university. Okay. So when I made an assignment, like a PowerPoint presentation, all of my friends are done, but I'm like looking at every little font size, font style, the color, like everything, reading like 10 times. There's no
Mhm.
grammatical error. People would think I'm crazy. They're like, who cares? It's just like 20% of your grade. You still have 80% to go. But I'm like, no, you have to read it. You have to read every page. And I would torture my friends as well and make them read my presentation. Like I would like literally go to 5 other people. I'd be like, can you read this for me? Like, is there any mistakes in there? And they would just, and they were all born and brought up here, right? Because in bachelor's, not a lot of international students commit to such huge financial burden of taking bachelor's. So you see a lot of masters, international student master's degree. So that was the first time I noticed. I was like, is something wrong with me that I'm
Really?
reading this like 3 times, which is only 20% of my grade. The other is what I noticed was the inability to say no because I'm such a perfectionist. If I say
Mm,
yes, see this through. I have to,
mm,
even if that means burning out, even if that means like 2 hours sleep at night, even
mhm.
if that means like, you know, saying no to friends or skipping gym or my favorite swim class, like everything, like if I've said yes to something ages ago without thinking it through and now something's come up on my calendar, I have to do this. The
Mhm.
other is perfectionism. When I was, for example, going for, group presentations, when you're doing presentations at
Yes.
university, especially your final year project, like you do in bachelor's, it's a huge project and you have to work with teams. So, you can always see the like strung up person. And that was what I was like stressing over every single detail. Oh my God, you said you're going to submit at 12 o'clock. It's 12:05. Where is this? So, like completely you know, like a big taskmaster. And I feel like that was a good quality I got out of it. But one thing I realized was when I first got my first job as a graduate site engineer, because what happens is universities paint this rosy picture with the rainbows of how your careers are going to be. And as soon as you get out, you have no cushion. Okay. You're like in with the sharks. You were swimming for your life. You're getting, especially I started as a construction site engineer. So I was on construction site outside Auckland 500 kilometers outside Auckland. So I had to relocate in the middle of nowhere with, men all around, barely a woman around. And, it was very daunting. And as a 5 a.m. starts, like I was doing 12 hours a day. And what happened was I thought my career was going to be something else. And
Mm.
then that whole perfectionism, rosy picture came down. And that's when, I fell into depression and I developed anxiety. And I thought something was wrong with me because the job is perfect, because my parents think it's perfect. Everybody thinks it's perfect. The paycheck says it's perfect. Mind you, I had everything. I had an apartment that the company was paying for. And I had to pay rent for a year, utilities, bills, you name it. I had a company ute, everything you can think of. I had it. But instead of thinking that maybe something's wrong with my career choices, maybe it's not the right career, I instead blamed it on me. I kept it inside of me. For a year, I gained weight. I developed an eating disorder where I just started eating my feelings. Every time I would cry, packet of Cheetos,
Mm.
eating, and crying. I lost all my friends and I alienated my family. It was a very hard time just because that perfectionism picture came down and I just didn't have the guts to admit it to anybody because in our culture, in Indian culture, you don't talk about bad things and you're going through. You only talk about the good things like weddings and like you get a good car, you get a house and you get a baby. You're only supposed to show off instead of ask for help. So asking for help was never something that I was taught. So when I was going through that, asking for help, oh my God, I can't ask for help. Like my thoughts were like, are you crazy? People will think you're weak. People
Mhm.
will think like you haven't got what it takes. You're a woman, it's 2021. Women can like, I don't know, operate cranes and boulders and you can't do a construction job. So I was, gaslighting myself. And that's how the perfectionism picture tormented me until I went into therapy and did a lot of reflection.
Wow. So you had to go into therapy to your story is so, I feel impactful. I feel like it's gonna hit for so many people because the fact that you said everything was great on paper. Your job, the salary looks good on paper. The job title looked good on paper. They were paying for your apartment, your utility, your bills for one whole year, and you still were unhappy. But one thing that we are not taught, what I know we're not taught culturally in the Caribbean and from my type of background, we're not taught to be happy. We're taught to please everyone else in our family. We're taught to wave the flag and exactly what you said. Why are you asking for help? Why would you need help? You have a great job. You're getting paid great money. You being happy, you should be happy. And that's the point. They're telling you should be happy because you have all these amazing things. Like in our culture, if you're the manager, that's all you need. If you got the manager title, they're impressed. Everyone's impressed. She's the manager of a company. You are the most amazing person. When I decided I wanted to quit my manager job to do a whole different industry, that was the biggest shame I could bring on everyone. Like, why would I want to leave from being a manager to now just being a regular member of staff. Even though I was unhappy, as far as they were concerned, their happiness as a family was more important than your individual happiness, because you're bringing a sort of viewpoint on them. Like, I know that my parents will look at it like I'm bringing shame or embarrassment to them. They're not worrying about if I'm happy, because we are programmed to just get it done. And I feel like there's two sides of that coin when it comes to your culture. For me, there are parts of that coin that actually have helped me in my career, but the parts that have not helped me are exactly what you spoke about: the burnout, the stress, the depression, and the choice not to go and ask for help because that's what you've been taught. That's what you've known your whole life. Like, just do. You're not taught to think. You're not taught to feel. You're just taught to get up, get off your ass and go and do it. Go and get the good title. Go and get the good grades. Go and get the good job. But if you said to them, I'm unhappy, the answer wouldn't be that, it would be why, but not why are you unhappy? Like, I want to help you. I feel like it always is but why? Something's wrong with you. If you're unhappy, is something wrong with you? Because it couldn't possibly be just that you've chosen the wrong career path. And I like that you said that, because culturally, we're not taught that the direction that we might have taken was wrong. We're taught that we must be wrong. And undoing that is one of the most important things I feel like you need to do when you are raised in a certain type of household or when you have a certain type of upbringing. Undoing the something's wrong with me and actually starting to look outside and say, could something just be wrong with the situation? So anyone listening, I want you to ask yourself that question. Could it be more than you? Could it just be that something's wrong with the situation and it's okay for you to look outside? How do you feel like you broke away? I know you said you had therapy, but how do you think you broke away from that mindset? And also, is there any parts of your culture that you feel benefited you in your career?
Okay, I want to go one by one on this.
Yep.
But even before I go into that, like
Mhm.
extending on to what you said, another question to ask yourself is, what are my beliefs? What are my morals? Because a lot of times we feel the way we've been raised, we have to take over from our parents because they're our role models and we've seen them grow up and they've, sacrificed so much as they've done it. Now we have YouTube where we can see entrepreneurs, billionaires, millionaires, leaders, activists. So you can choose to have a different role model. And that's very important. What are your beliefs? Number one, and how are your beliefs different to your parents or your society or the culture? And as soon as you write them down in a table, everything makes more sense when you write it down. That's what I sort of did. But coming to how did I break out of it? So I had to, it was like, imagine like a rice cooker boiling and boiling and boiling, and the water like spills out of it. And then it's just one day because you haven't like released that pressure. You haven't like given it some space, just like, and that's what happened with me. COVID happened. I thankfully didn't lose my job because I was in a bigger company and they chose to keep the graduates. And I was in a project that was like a national project, so it couldn't stop. So I was very, very lucky. However, in COVID, when I was alienated by everywhere around the world, like, how much time can you spend talking to your parents every day, right? About like, what are you cooking? What are you doing? So I was all alone in that house because everybody of my flatmates, they were from New Zealand and they went back to their parents' place, So I was all alone in a 4-bedroom house for 6 months in lockdown. I went nuts. Like, can you imagine alone? Like, I was not even scared of my security. I was more like, what the hell am I supposed to do all alone? I know, like staring at walls, like how much TV, Netflix, how many walks can you take? How many times can you bake a pie or cookies? Like you are bound to run out of things to do. And that's when is the reason I say 6 months lockdown is because New Zealand was going in and out and in and out. And that's when I decided I felt like, one day I couldn't like get out of bed and I had like this heart rate. Like I thought I was going to have a heart attack. Like, my heart rate was like high. And I woke up and I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And then I Googled, my symptoms and it says you might have anxiety. And I was like, what is anxiety? Like, I don't have the meaning of anxiety. I didn't even know the meaning of anxiety because no one talks about these things, No one talks about sadness, anxiety, anger. What's the difference? And that's when I was like, oh my God. And I saw some therapists online, like their rates and stuff, found one in my budget. And I remember that call with my therapist I had. She asked me, what are you feeling? And I knew only one word, anxiety. And I told her, I think I'm feeling anxiety. That's what Google says. And opted on for a face-to-face therapy session when everything went to bit more normal. So how I got out of it was number one, understanding the difference between. Sorry, no, I'm going to say that again. How did I get out of it? How I got out of it, number one, was asking for help. That was something I never did as a child. That was something, asking for help. What is it? Nobody tells us. Number two is having that courage to take this decision without running anybody through it. So what I did was, when I decided to go to therapy, I didn't tell my parents or anybody in the world. Nobody knew because I thought it was such a taboo. Like, I'm mentally ill. Like, oh my God, I need to be in like a mental asylum or something. Like, something's wrong with me. And I was so ashamed to talk about my mental health that I decided to like delete my Facebook, my Instagram, delete all the apps or deactivate my profile and had WhatsApp to connect with my parents. And I would just talk to them very irregularly, and I would go to therapy. The number four thing, what helped me was like understanding what emotions are. A lot of time we don't know emotion because we're not taught in Indian culture. I'm sure in Caribbean culture as well. Nobody tells you this is sadness, this is anger. Then it was like me going to primary school and learning emotions, learning breathing, learning meaning of boundaries. Like my therapist, like I was like a 2-year-old kid. I asked her, can you define boundaries for me? And I would write it in my notebook, like literally. I would write definitions of things, boundaries, anxiety, sadness, anger. And we would do these constant exercises, what I'm feeling. And that really helped me bridge that gap, in that information gap that I was missing as a child. I even asked about, a lot of other things. We digged in through my childhood, and that's when we realized the upbringing had a lot of things to do with it. The other was defining my morals. One of the exercises that I really loved doing with my therapist was, okay, what do you think your society believes what a perfect life is? What beliefs, son? What do you think your parents' beliefs are? Let's put it in 3 separate categories. Because often what we do is, for example, we think, oh, because my parents believe we should not eat meat, then I shouldn't eat meat, for example. Right. But maybe you don't, that's just been programmed into you as a child that eating meat will defy something, or it's bad for your body. And so those were the exercises that I did to break out. The other thing was isolation. I know this is the worst case scenario to do, and I wouldn't recommend anybody isolating themselves, but I deactivated all social media because social media was really triggering for me at that time. And a lot of times, in social media, we see, and I'm an influencer, so I'll tell you, it's all fake, pretty much. You rarely find genuine people out there. And you'll see these flashy cars and beautiful people and happy couples, and it's not there. They're fighting behind the, video. It's not the truth. So a lot of times when you're going through careers, oh my God, LinkedIn was so triggering for me. People posting, oh my God, I love this job. I love my job. And I am just like, I'll tell you, I used to drive my car and used to drive through a cliff, right? I was in the Kapiti Coast. So I don't know a lot of people from New Zealand listening, but they're listening. They would know New Zealand is like one of the most riskiest places to drive because it's so windy and there's like a cliff on the side. So I would drive every day to work and I had tears in my eyes and I was suicidal. So I would pray to God before, please crash this car because I don't have the energy to just swerve it right to go into the cliff. So every day I would look forward to that thing. And because I felt completely rubbish, like I felt like my whole life was a scam. Because everything that I was told by my parents, that, your flashy car and this and that, everything, you have. And they used to boast off to their, friends about my job and stuff. And my friends were jealous of my job. Oh my God. So many people are jealous of my job, but I just didn't find it. So it was therapy really helped. Other thing was defining that, hey, I am not my job. A lot of times, especially in my culture, people think that you are what your job is, and that's all you're going to do. And you're a civil engineer. Oh my God, you're a civil engineer. That's all you're going to do in your life, But a lot of times we don't understand that we go to job to earn money, to put food on the table, not to define our values and not to define our life, So segregating yourself from the job and seeing it as a job that you're supposed to go in, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Some days maybe low performance, some days maybe high performance. That's okay, because half of the people there are basically half-assing their job anyways, so you're
Right.
not alone. And understanding that sometimes you're in a wrong career, and because nobody told you what a career is. Like, I didn't even know what a career is. Like, I don't even know why I became an engineer, to be honest, because,
Hmm.
that was what my father asked me to be. And he said either
Hmm.
mechanical or civil, and civil was easiest probably. The other one was after I finished this job, the graduate role, after a year, I thought, oh my God, I was so dumb. I looked at it. I was like, maybe the location is the problem. I was still delusional. I was like, maybe if I move back to Auckland, I have my whole friend community. I'll do the same job, but in Auckland, and it will be fine. It's like a test run. 3 months into the new job, same depression, same symptoms came back, same anxiety. Wake up every day and I feel like, oh, I don't want to go to work. I hate my life. I hate the people I work with. I hate this job. It's not helping me. It's not challenging me mentally. And I left that job then, and I transitioned to marketing because I was like, I don't care. I never want to be in marketing, but if I'm in this role, it is paying so well that I would stay in, and it's going to become permanent. One day I will be okay with it. So I
Hmm.
guess if thing is not fulfilling you now, get out of it, get a bartending job, get a waitress job, get a marketing job, get an HR job, get an assistant job, get something, because going in a new job is always a breath of fresh air, and you're not there permanently. So it makes it more easier to focus on your job applications to a job you really want to be doing. So that's how I sort of broke out of it. And in terms of freedom, sorry, I'm doing a whole monologue here,
Hmm.
but in terms of freedom, I think as an immigrant, you're always made to feel second class in a country. I don't know. You should ask your mother because she was an immigrant. You're always made to feel that you have to keep your mouth shut. You can be deported anytime. You cannot report to employer if they are being racist. You cannot report any sexual harassment. You cannot, have a parking ticket or a speeding ticket. So I always felt that I'm not equal to a person who was born here, because or who has the same this New Zealand passport. And I always felt whenever I was going for job interviews that, oh, they're not going to select me. They're going to get like a New Zealander person to get it.
Hmm.
Or because I have a visa and I'm like their second choice. And you always gaslight yourself. You put yourself down because maybe you're trying to build that defense around yourself that if you get job rejection, you can just blame it on the citizenship. While that might be true, that they might have a certain code of citizens and residents they have to take in, that feeds into your mindset when you go into work. You don't speak up. You stay late at night. You overwork. You put your hand up for Sundays because, oh my God, you're an immigrant, you're on a visa, right? You need the company more than the company needs you. And I did not break out of that mindset until I got my residency here. And the day I got my residency, about almost 2 years ago, I had that holy shit. Like, the way I walked in this country was so different. I was like, you cannot mess with me. And and I am equal. And I think getting the residency status felt like liberating. That is why I was able to do my job. Like right now, I'm unemployed for 2 weeks. Next 2 weeks is because I was like, fuck that, I'm not doing this job. And I said the same thing to my managers, like, I don't need to have this job legally because I am a permanent resident of the country. So I am choosing to walk out. And it felt so liberating that, holy shit, if I don't have a job, who cares? I'll find another
Yes.
one. So yeah, that was one thing. But things that I learned from my culture, the beautiful things, hard work. What does it mean to work hard in your life? Family is so important. And my culture taught me family, how to take care of family, how to respect your elders, how to get respect and how to give respect. What does respect look like? You don't see that in a lot of European families. As like, I'm sorry, but white people can just tell their parents to fuck off. I can't. I'll get slapped. Honestly, I am still scared of my mother. Okay, I probably will be scared until she's fucking 90 years old, and that's the truth. So what does respect look like? I have to respect how important is family in your overall life, and overall health is very important. The other is perseverance. a lot of people quit. But people who are ethnic will know perseverance is something you're taught. You can survive mountains because of your culture. You can run up mountains, you can take any shit. And it also makes you very strong headed if you're immigrant, ethnic, or non-European in any way, I would say, is because you are taught to, you're raised by strong women, who've seen a lot of things, who've done a lot of things, who've fought, who've survived a lot of things. So from that, you learn, okay, I need to stand my ground and I'm going to do this. I'm going to die on this hill and stand my ground. Then, take no for an answer. And that's something that I learned from my culture. Yeah.
Ooh, oh. Firstly, I want to say thank you for sharing such a vulnerable part of your life, talking about how you really felt when you got into the worst of your depression. I want to thank you for being that vulnerable, because I know there's someone listening who needs to hear that there's a way out of that darkness. So thank you for sharing that part of your story. That was really touching, and I really appreciate that. Everything you said felt so relatable to me. It's so funny that our parents can be from different parts of the world, but we have so many cultural undertones that are the same, so many cultural expectations that are the same. Like when you were talking about the fact that you will work your ass off and die on that hill, I know exactly how you feel, because even when I started this business, that part of my culture where it's like, I cannot give up. I'm not allowed to give up. I'm not allowed to give in. When I first started my business and I had like 6 months with no clients, I did not give up. I've seen people start businesses and leave because it got hard. When it gets hard for me, I just have to keep going because it's built in me. Culturally, I am taught that when we had nothing, my mum still got up and worked 3 jobs to figure it out. I come from a long line of strong women where giving up is not an option. My mum will call me soft. Like growing up, my mum would say to me, "You're such a soft little English child." That's what I used to hear. She'd be like, "You're such a little soft English girl." And I'd be like, "What?" And that was like a bad thing. Like, oh my God, I'm a soft little English girl. I need to be strong. So I worked and worked and worked, and I won't ever give up. And a lot of my employers have benefited from that. They have benefited from my culture of working hard and keep going, because it meant that I stay late, I work extra, I never say no. Like what you were saying, boundaries aren't a thing when you grow up in a Caribbean household. My mum would tell me she gave me life. She would tell me, any Caribbean people listening to this, I know you've heard this, I gave you life, I can take it. So therefore, whatever she says is law and is gospel, and you will do it. And that is how I was raised. And I know so many of my other Caribbean friends that that's how we grew up. We grew up in households where there's no boundaries. Your parents will walk in your room when they want. They will read whatever you have. You have no privacy. Privacy is not existent in a Caribbean household. I was taught that authority figures were always right. That was a big one. So authority figures being right means that you have to listen. So when my boss was treating me badly, being rude, whether it was treating me horribly because I was a woman, being racist, whatever it was, it didn't matter. I shut my mouth and I got on with it, because I was taught that authority was always correct. When you're growing up, it's like you said, I could never swear at my mum. I wouldn't be here if I saw my mum growing up. I wasn't even allowed to look at my mum in a certain way growing up. Like if I looked at her for too long, she would say, "Oh, you think you're an adult?" And I would get a slap. Because if I'm getting told off, look down. Do not look in her eyes. That was never acceptable. So understanding that part and just listening to you talk was like, wow, like I don't feel alone. I feel like even though it's a different culture, it almost feels like home when you're talking. Like when you were talking and talking about your background, it feels like home to me, because it's how I was raised. Parts of what you talked about is how I was raised. It's what I know. And I don't know whether it's because it's an overseas thing and it's not European upbringing, because it's a non-European upbringing. But I know some of my European listeners might be saying, listen, Adele, there's some things that we can relate to, because obviously different parts of Europe might be different from the UK. Who knows? But I just know that growing up in that type of culture can be so, like you said, it's almost like you have no understanding. You're like a child. You don't realize that you should have boundaries. You don't realize I'm allowed to say no. You don't realize that you don't have to respect authority figures when they're doing the wrong thing, because you're not taught that. You're taught the total opposite. And you said something that I think is really important to anyone that was listening, when you said, when you look at your beliefs and you think about your beliefs, ask yourself, are they yours or are they your parents'? something I always say to my clients when I'm working with them is define your life outside of work, and do you want your parents' life? We love our parents and we love our families, but when you look at them, are they living a life you want? If they are not, then you need to start thinking about whether their beliefs got them where they are. If that's not where you want to be, you will need to reprogram your beliefs. Because when I look at my mum, I love her to death, but I don't want her life. And if I don't want her life, I can't take all her opinions, her beliefs. I can't take that on board, because otherwise my life will mirror her life. And then defining your life outside of work. We're taught so much that we are what we do. I was taught that growing up. Like, my job, the first thing they're going to ask me is what I do for a job. And if it's not a good job, then I'm an embarrassment and I need to go and sit in a corner or something. So I want people to define what you are outside your job. Like you said, you quit your job and you just went and did marketing because you just needed that relief, that breather, that space to be like, what do I actually want? I always ask my clients to define what your life is, not what your job is. How do you want to live? How often do you want to travel? What type of house do you want to live in? What type of family do you want to have? Because that is so, if you can define that, your job starts to be less important. The only importance your job will have is how can it fund my lifestyle versus how can it define me? If you want to not let your job define you, start defining your life outside of work, and then figure out how your job can feed your life outside of work rather than the other way around. Culturally, we're taught, how can our life feed our job? Actually, what about if your job can feed your life? So yeah, I really loved how you shared the struggle. I really loved how you shared the culture, because I do think it's so important. But I also love how you said there are great things in your culture: respect, family. These things cannot be replaced. Like, these things build our character and they give us a different type of strength. A strength, and it's the strength that stops you from turning that car, because it is almost, like I said, it's ingrained in us, like that strength to, like, you can't give up. You aren't allowed to give up, even when it's the hardest thing. You are not allowed. So therefore you choose not to give up. So I do think on the flip side, like I said, there's two sides to that one coin. There's the negative side that creates a lot of negativity, but there's that other side that creates a lot of strength. And I know we've been talking for a while, but before I let you go, I want to ask you two more quick questions. I just want to ask you, do you think that your culture has affected your money? My clients, listen, my listeners expect me to talk about money at some point in all conversation. So do you ever feel like, because for me, culturally, I definitely feel like it affected my money, because I had that respect for authority figures. If they told me that I didn't have enough experience and I needed to accept a certain salary, or if they said, like, you need to do this extra work and take on this extra responsibility, I just did. I never thought to ask for more money, because in our household, your job pays you and you should just be grateful. That's how I was taught. I was raised in a way where you should be grateful that you got a job. You don't challenge your manager. So therefore, if I'm not challenging my manager, why would I challenge my salary? So I think it was almost like an unsaid rule. Like, I just thought, like, they tell you your salary, you accept it, because that's how I was sort of raised. So do you feel like in Indian culture, was there anything, like, as far as money, did you ever feel like your upbringing hindered or helped you when it came to, like, money?
Yes and no. Okay, so I was raised by entrepreneurs. So my parents both started their own business and left their jobs as soon as
I
they
love that.
got married, because they wanted to get out of this 9 to 5 cycle, and they knew that they won't be able to survive with 3 children and pay for their education if they just lived a 9 to 5 job. So they were the first, their entire generation, to do a business. So because my grandfather was a writer, poet slash bank worker, so, and my grandmother was
Wow.
a housewife. So
Right.
they didn't have any financial support or anything.
Mhm.
So one thing that I was taught growing up was, so I wouldn't, first thing I'll say is I was never taught how to manage finances, if I would say. A lot of brown people are not told, hey, this is how you manage your finances. It's okay to splurge. It's okay to have splurge money. You don't have to save every cent. Instead, what I was told was, you have to save every cent you have, because drop and drop will makes the ocean. That was a word, like lines I was saying. The drop by drop makes an entire ocean. So what you save now is going to reflect like in 50 years.
Oh my gosh, we say, like, every penny. We say, look after the pennies and they'll make the pounds. That's what my mum used to say.
Similar.
So just
Yeah.
keep all the pennies, because then that's how you make the pounds, like the million.
Yeah. Exactly. So same. So I don't believe in that, to be honest. My parents have never splurged, and I hate them for doing that. They instead will say, "Oh, you will live our life through your eyes. You guys go to Paris or Italy or whatever," but they wouldn't spend $1,000 for a ticket, which is the most ridiculous thing. How are you gonna see things through for iPhone? I'm sorry, but please come with me, which is something I've tried. I've got out of because I left India at the age of 17. So I was quite young and I was still molding as a person. I didn't know who I was. So it's good I left India at a young age. If I would have left India for my master's, so at 23, 25, oh God, I would be a totally different person. We won't be friends. I'll tell you that. No. So when I went overseas, like I lived in Lithuania, I lived in Prague, I lived in, then now I moved to New Zealand. I've picked up things from different cultures that I like, and I've not picked up specific things that I don't like from different cultures. So in terms of yes, so that's the thing. Other is my father always raised me somehow. I think he was biased against all his children. He always like mind manipulated me, saying, "You're gonna be an entrepreneur, okay? Do a
Oh.
job and do your own business because that is how you make money." He used to
Ooh.
say that ever since I was a 5-year-old girl, he would take me for ice cream, like a $1 ice cream, like from the store, and he would keep feeding this in my brain. So ever since I was a young child, he didn't say that to my sister or my brother. So strange,
Ah, he saw
right?
something in
But
you.
I don't know. Maybe he was biased or something. I, I am his favorite child. He admits that verbally. So he will listen to this and be nodding. So he always put that seed in my brain where I knew that I want to go to New Zealand. And I'll tell you that when I was young, I used to hate that. I'm like, no, I'm going to go to New Zealand or US or UK. I'm going to earn like $1 billion and I'm going to love my job. I'm never going to do business because, ew, I cannot work till 9 o'clock at night. I used to like repel it. And he would hate when I say that. We would have like long conversations and discussions. And so he always pushed me towards entrepreneurship because he just said that there's only so much limited things you can do when you're working for somebody else. But when you're working for yourself, that's when the real money comes, and that's when the stakes are high. The higher the risk, the higher the stakes, the higher the reward, he used to say. Whereas my mother was very different. My mother, and I didn't have really, I don't like to speak publicly about that, but we don't have a good relationship. And I mean, she's awesome, but she didn't have a mother. She didn't know how to be a mother. So she was like this, like, robot person that would just, be like, okay, they're child, sort of that thing. So she would always just tell me, keep your head down. She would say the opposite thing. Keep your head down. Be happy with what you've got. You're over ambitious. You're going the wrong way. Don't do this. So when I started my Instagram stuff, she was the biggest critic. She's like, what are you doing on Reels? This doesn't even make money. What are you doing? And now she's completely different, that I've gained her respect. She doesn't question. So the my motives. However, one thing about finances, what my parents don't do, what I do is invest in good resources for my business. So if I need a good tripod and it's like $600, like, the whole setup, I would do that. My parents don't understand why $600-$700 has to go to a mic when you can buy a one, but they don't understand the quality and the investment you have to do in your business. Same goes for staff. Like I like to pay my staff reasonably well because I like to retain them for longer. Where they don't understand it. They're like, why can't you just hire in? And I'm just like, okay, look,
cheap
lady,
stuff.
do not,
Yeah.
you do not understand how things work. So those are the things, I guess, I hope goes away with their generation. And so, yeah, that's how I think money changed for me. But in terms of negotiations and stuff, yes, I didn't negotiate well. And that's because, you're always told, oh, be happy with what you got. Oh my God, you're earning dollars, Divya. Dollar to rupee conversion. Oh my God, what are you gonna do with extra $5,000? And I'm just like, but I'm spending in dollars too. I'm not saving anything. What are you on about?
In the English pounds, I'm telling you, Caribbean people will say to you, Adele, you're in UK, you're making English pounds. It's a lot of money, but they're forgetting that we're spending the English pounds. We're not spending Caribbean dollars.
Exactly. People don't understand. Like I hope some of my friends listen to this,
Mhm.
especially in India, is that bro, you guys are more richer than I am. Okay. The rent that I pay,
Right.
like you probably pay per month rent versus what I pay weekly. New Zealand is like horrible for savings. You
Mhm.
cannot save anything in New Zealand. I would never recommend anybody to come to New Zealand because it is so, so expensive. I'll tell you, one cucumber, like
Mhm. Yeah.
a stick of cucumber, is $12, Adele.
$12. It's
It's
like what?
so bad.
It's like one
Grown
pound
behavior.
here. It's like £1. Two
Yeah,
pounds in the
it's
UK.
so bad.
$12.
So bad. Like you can't afford, I have not bought fresh vegetables in so many years. I buy
Wonder
frozen
what the
ones.
I wonder what their conversion is. When we get off this, I'm going to
Yeah,
go and
you
look at
have
the
to.
conversion because $12 sounds insane to me for a cucumber. Imagine I'm gonna have to look at the conversion. Absolutely gonna have to look at the conversion because that sounds crazy to me. But I say that to the people in the Caribbean. When you live in the Caribbean, you can pick fruit. Like trees are hanging, you can pick fruit and stuff.
Mm.
We don't have those options. Everything is paid for. And I get that sometimes in the third world, obviously it's hard. But I think they don't understand that it's hard in the Western world in the sense of sometimes you live paycheck to paycheck because you just about have enough to pay the bills and pay everything else. And that's why it's so important for us to negotiate and ask for more and advocate for ourselves.
Yeah, and also I'll tell you one thing is like mango here. You don't get mangoes here. So
Yeah.
when I go to India, I eat mangoes like a
All the mango.
lunatic. I'm
I love
like,
mango.
why
It's one of my
you ate
favorites.
10 mangoes in like a breath? And I'm like, you don't get it there, okay? It's like $12 a piece. I can't eat it there. I'm poor. I
It's
need mangoes. And you guys get it for like less than 50 cents. I
sense.
need mangoes. It's ridiculous. And people always think that just because you're in a third world country, you're earning more.
Mm-mm.
But it's so not true. Like for me, I would earn so much more money and save and invest if I was in India than
Mm.
in New Zealand because it's just so difficult. It's just
Yeah,
so
one of
difficult to.
my friend who's in the UK, lived here her whole life. She's moved to Saudi just because financially she's now better off being in Saudi. One of my other friends moved to Dubai in February. But Saudi, she said to me, has been like her rent is so much lower, bills are so much lower, and she's just found it a lot easier and a lot more comfortable to live. She said to me she's never coming back. So we'll see, but
Same.
it says
I
it
mean,
all.
I'm telling you, I'm leaving New Zealand too in 3 years. I'm out
And
of here
that's it,
because
you're
it's.
out.
I'll tell you, the
Mhm,
cost of one shitty house in Auckland, which is like three
mhm.
bedroom, 4 bedroom, it's like $1 million. You would
Wow.
have a 40-year mortgage, paying that over your 9 to 5, and you'll be worried about leaving your 9 to 5 because you have to pay mortgage. It's ridiculous. And imagine kids. Oh my
Mm.
God, no.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but in terms of finances, like we're not taught that. We're just taught, oh my God, look at the shiny picture. Look at the shiny,
Yes,
picture you're
yes,
getting.
yes. That you're just getting money, and we're not taught like, oh, how much you need. It's just, oh, you're getting this money. You're getting the English pound. Like you're doing very well. So I totally understand.
Oh my God, I can tell you stories and stories, honestly.
Oh, I love having you. This has been so good. I want to finish up by us talking to the listeners and telling them how they can start to reframe their cultural programming. I think you've touched on so many ways that they can, but I think it would be great if we just give them like right at the end, just like 2 or 3 things they can start to do to reframe like the beliefs, everything, just to change their approach. Like what tips would you give someone?
Okay. One thing I'll say before I even give tips is number one is if you are in that phase where you're questioning everything you've been taught, you're not alone. I have been there, Adele's been there, and I'm sure a billion other people out there are going through exact same thing. Because when you're put in a situation, let's say you move countries, or maybe you move, you may be working remotely for a country in the US or UK or whatever, or you might have moved simple, cities or jobs. The change of environment sometimes can be really good for us and can also be daunting and uncomfortable because it might make us question the things we're doing and why we're doing. So if you're questioning, that's always a good step. So yes, it can be extremely confusing and can feel uncomfortable that, oh my God, who am I? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? It's completely okay. So one tip I would give is, number one is have a diary. What really helped me during the most difficult time of my life was just writing notes, writing things down. It was like me talking to myself. Having that diary would also help you reflect how far you've come. When you look at it 1 year down, when you've come out of this phase, you're going to look at it and be so proud. And if you ever find yourself in that phase, you can always go back to that diary and maybe find those answers. So writing and journaling always helps, because when we are in that space where we are so afraid to let anybody in because we don't know what we're feeling, so how can we express it? Sometimes just talking to ourselves really, really helps. Number two is creating that chart, as I said, which helped me, is what are my beliefs? What are my non-negotiables in life? What are my negotiables in life? What do I want? Versus what my parents have taught me what it should be, versus what my community or my society has taught me. And understanding, okay, I am not my thoughts. I am not my parents. I'm just a byproduct of them. And I am not my parents. I could choose to pick things that they believe in because I believe in, and I can choose to differ from them, and that is okay. Being okay with being your own individual self, it can be very daunting, especially when you don't know who you are, and you might be, questioning everything, and you might be talking to your parents, and you might be worried about speaking up, or at work as well. Maybe you're in an uncomfortable situation and somebody said something to you, and your heart is saying, I need to speak up, but your cultural program is saying, hey, shut the F up. You're on a work visa. Then, understanding what you're coming from, maybe there's a better way to address the issue. Number three for cultural programming, I would say, is be adaptable. Like, I'm still going through this. I'm not joking. Like, for example, my parents don't even know I've left my job. Like, I'm unemployed. I've told them I've given my 4 weeks resignation because I'm so worried that they will judge me and they will be like, oh my God, how are you going to 3 weeks of rent? What are you going to do? And understanding that you may choose to keep things private for yourself, and when you're ready to share with the world, and also understanding, being adaptable, that, hey, okay, this is not something my parents would want me to do, or this is not something how I was raised. I was raised to just get on with it and put keep my eyes shut and mouth closed and look down and just do your 4 weeks notice or whatever. But if it's uncomfortable, if it's not, in alignment for your beliefs, just walk out. It's better to walk out 100%. That's what I did. I walked out, and, just be okay with things being a bit uncomfortable and figuring it out, and even if you don't have all figured out, it's okay. The last tip I would say is negative self-talk. I literally was facing this issue for past 2 weeks. My partner can tell you, Kevin has been like dealing with that, where I do a lot of negative self-talk because my mother a lot of negative self-talk at me, where she was like, oh, you'll never be successful, or you're too ambitious, don't do this, don't do this. I was always taught, don't do this. So I was always asked to question my actions. So I've been actually waiting to hear back from 2 interviews who've done the reference check, okay? So I know they both want me, okay? They've done the reference check last week, but they still haven't called me. And I keep telling Kevin every day, they don't want me, I made a mistake in the interview. I did something wrong. They don't want me. So we try to do a negative self-talk, and we try to put ourselves down, and we try to make us feel that we are not good enough, or there is something wrong with us. That's why we didn't get that opportunity, or that's why the recruiter is not calling, or that's why I didn't get the pay raise that I wanted. Well, no, a lot of times there are things beyond your control, and being comfortable with not having everything in control. It's okay to let that control go, because as a perfectionist, you want everything under control to the T. But it's okay to write it down. I like to write it down. So what I do is I make a list, things in my control, like my gym, my sleeping schedule, my weight, my macros, the jobs I apply to, things out of my control. Recruiter calling me. Recruiter my manager giving me a pay raise. Okay, these are out of my control. But and then making another list from there, what things are out of your control, what can you do to counteract? So for example, if your manager didn't give you the raise that you wanted, that happened with me, I made the list and I said, I'll walk out. I made a list. Literally, I made a table. I can send a data screenshot if you guys want. I made a table and I said, I literally wrote an arrow and I said, I can walk out, find another job. And I just did that. I was like, okay, it's not on my control. Well, she's not giving me a pay rate. But what's under my control is to choose to say no and walk out. So finding how you can act on those things that are beyond your control.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh. I think that we should end the episode there just because that was such an amazing way to end it. Guys, I hope you've listened to every single one of Divya's tips. If you haven't, I'm going to need you to rewind and listen to them again because she has dropped some awesome, awesome gems. You can't control everything, but how can you control the things you can control? So even when things are out of your control, what can you do to put them back in your control? And I think that's such a great way to end. But Divya, thank you so much for joining me. But before we go, can you let everyone know where they can find you, how they can work with you, how they can hear so many more of your gems? Like, let them know.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh my God. If you love my personality, you can definitely find me on Instagram. I'm sure Adele is going to put all the links in somewhere. Okay. But you can find me on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active. I have started a YouTube channel. It is quite small and I'm so excited to make it bigger next year. So YouTube is where I put more long form content about, resumes, cover letters, graduate roles, etc., etc. And you can always email me. I'll send, Adele my email so you guys can contact me. And yes, just reach out to me. And please tell me how you found the podcast, okay? It is my second time doing it, so I was very nervous.
I didn't tell you were nervous. It was such a great episode. All Divya's information is going to be in the show notes, guys. So if you want to find her YouTube, her Instagram, you'll just scroll down into the show notes and you'll be able to see it. But I want to thank you once again for joining me. Thank you so much for being here. This has been such an amazing episode and I can't wait for people to listen. Guys, let me know in the little question box that's on Spotify and Apple. Let me know like what you thought of the episode. If you've got any questions, I can direct you to Divya. She can answer some, I can answer some. Whatever your background is, there are things that have contributed to the positives and the negatives in your career. And when they've contributed to the negatives, there's ways to change it around. So yeah, reach out, let us know how you like the podcast. And thank you for listening as always. I will see you in the next episode. I hope this episode gave you exactly what you needed and motivated you to confidently take steps towards your next career move. If you enjoyed it, screenshot and share it on your socials, tag me on Instagram, and come join my community of amazing women working on leveling up their confidence and career. Thanks for listening and see you next time.